Welcome everybody, good morning and welcome to today's webinar, which is looking at making GIS consumer friendly for local authority service users. So before we begin, just some general housekeeping. So today's session is going to last roughly 45 minutes. And what we'll be doing is rather than you writing notes, we're going to be sending the recording round after. So if there's something that you're interested in, don't worry about having to write it down. You can always watch it on the review after. If you've got any questions, feel free to submit them down the right hand side. What we'll do is we'll try and answer as many questions as possible. Depending on numbers, we might have to get back to you, but we are very good at getting back to you with the questions that people have asked. So we'll do that at the end. And then what you can also do, which will help us out, is we've got an exit survey that we provide that tells us what webinars you want in the future and helps us kind of develop the webinar series that we've been running recently. So if you can answer the exit survey, that'd be really appreciated and really help with the next couple of webinars that we've got set up. So today, what I'm going to be doing, so my name is Ian Usher. I'm the Business Development Manager at CAD Corp, and I look after the local authorities within the UK. And what I'm really pleased to be joined by Matt Horwell, and he's from Stoke-on-Trent City Council, and he's going to be presenting on how he's been making GIS more consumer friendly within the Stoke-on-Trent City Council. So just so you know that you're in the right place, we've got an agenda. So what I thought we could do is just for those that are unfamiliar with CAD Corp, I just thought we'd have a little slide that tells you who we are and what we do. And then we're going to go into the main section of the webinar. So we're going to look at how we can make GIS consumer friendly using the desktop and web mapping applications, and then how it can be made more friendly for kind of analysis and the results side of things, before I pass over to Matt, who's going to give us some examples of how he's made GIS consumer friendly within Stoke-on-Trent. And then, as we like to do, we like to demonstrate a couple of things. So we've got a couple of things we're going to demonstrate towards the end. And then, like I say, we've got a chance to answer a couple of questions towards the end of the webinar as well. So about CAD Corp. So CAD Corp are a UK-based software company who develop the Spatial Information System, or CAD Corp SIS, which provides desktop GIS used for capturing and analysing spatial data, and web and mobile applications which allow for you to share and visualise spatial information over the web. And this is all built using the CAD Corp core technology. So we provide a number of applications across multiple different sectors, and you can see the sectors in the bottom, and our main sectors are kind of housing, government and emergency services. And I can see from today that we've got a good mixture of attendees, so hopefully your sector is covered in there somewhere and you'll all find this as useful as each other. So we like to keep these webinars really interactive. So what we like to do is just like to run a quick poll to see to ask kind of questions, just so you feel like you had an input today. So what I'm going to do is just launch this first question. So if I press launch. So the first question is why are you here today? So we're all here today for a number of different reasons. It might be to learn something new. It might be to learn the best practices of GIS within the local authority. You might be here simply to view examples of how to make the most of existing GIS, or even educate yourself in latest technologies. So if you can answer the quick question that we've got in front of us, I can see, I'll give you all guys another 20 or 30 seconds, which actually feels like a long time, so I might just cut that short. So I can see that we've had 88%, 89% of people voting, and I'm going to close that now. And I can see that the majority of you are here to learn something new, which is great. So you're definitely in the right place. And what we're also going to do is we've got another question. So again, we just ask this simple question, if you can reply on the buttons below. So is your organisation looking at investing in web or GIS at the minute? So if you can just give us a quick vote for that as well. It's interesting, these webinars are a really good way of getting people to, it's a really good way of you guys understanding other people's software. It's a webinar series is really good for getting information across to you guys. So it's good for us to know exactly why you're here and what you're looking at doing. So I've had 75% of people vote. I'm just going to wait another couple of seconds, see if we can get that up to 80 maybe. No. Okay, I'm going to close 79. I'm going to close that poll, and that's quite interesting because that's kind of a third for each. So so that's quite interesting that some of you are looking at investing in GIS or web mapping at some point, and some of you definitely are, and then the other third are just here for educational purposes. So I just want to talk about a bit about our products that you're going to see today, and the things that you'll see within Matt's demonstration in a second. So desktop can be used to, so CAD Corpus's desktop can be used to simply read data. So as an organization, you're going to get loads and loads of different data files in different formats and different projections. And these can be flat files, so your shape files and your mid files and your tab files and things like that. It could be connections to spatial databases, so your business management systems are going to be different types of spatial database, so Oracle and SQL and PostGIS. Or it could even be connections to other web services. So a lot of people publish data via WMS or WFS, and users might just want to simply add other users' data in. So it's really important the desktop supports all these kind of different data files that you guys want to add into your own desktop GIS. And the desktop GIS can also be used to complete your advanced analysis. So things like routing, hotspot analysis, advanced spatial querying, or it could even be used to administer the website that you might be using as well. So the data sets that you bring might be easily published to the web. So CAD Corpus's web map is a tool that allows you to visualize and query spatial information over the web. And we make it really simple because your users want to see data straight away and make it really easy for them to understand it. So the web mapping application provides a simple interface that is based on a slippy map. So it makes it really easy for the end user to navigate around the map and see the data that is available to them. And the web mapping application can also be stored locally or in the cloud on your behalf. So it makes it easier for admin to maintain the kind of version of the application as well. The web mapping application you're using shouldn't be any different if you're using it on a mobile device. So it should be able to present the same data with the same functionality on a tablet or mobile device with the appropriate kind of scaled map that you can see in front of you. So the application we can see here is our mobile mapping. And then to make things consistent, we could use the same application, so the same web map, to then embed a map into a third-party website, for example, such as the application Power BI or a website in order for users to view data. But the organization need to present the same corporate mapping so that members of the public are used to it and internal employees. So instead of having to change the projection, for example, it's easy to take a web map, put it into a web page, and that same consistent base mapping is throughout your organization. Your analysis of GIS might come from multiple different methods. So what you can see here is we've got a simple click on a map, and that simple click tells you more about the appropriate data set that you've selected and presents the attributes in such a way that it makes it easy for the users to understand. A web service can provide more advanced spatial analysis to the user straight away. So here we've got a web service called Local Knowledge, and that's presenting what we think the user will want to see in relation to a property that they searched on. So in this example, we can see information that relates to when our bins are being collected and how many crimes there are in an area and how many where the nearest bus stops and allotments are. So that's a really quick way of getting data over to the user straight away. The user might also want to extract data. So we don't want to make it complicated. We want the user to select a boundary and then say, I want a 50-meter buffer within that boundary and select all the properties. So we make it really easy for the user to be able to extract data, and that extraction can be exported to a CSV file, which can then be added to other applications or analyzed further in Excel or Power BI, for example. And then our final analysis comes from our GIS user-friendly constraint checker, which runs on the property. So simply by selecting a polygon or drawing an area or selecting the base mapping that you can see underneath, we can query lots and lots of different data at the same time and get those results in a PDF format, which can be shared with other users across the organization. And that's one of the examples of the results. So PDF's quite a common output for GIS, and the find it constraint checker here is presenting the information that we've searched on, and it presents it in a PDF document, which we'll see during the demonstration. The notice board application allows for the sharing of spatial analysis in order for members of the public to self-serve without necessarily the requirement for a map. So people know where they live, and they can simply enter their postcode or their address, or they could use their GPS if they're accessing the same site on a tablet or mobile device. And the information gets presented in a easy and understandable way that doesn't necessarily need the requirement of a map to enforce those results. And then the final thing is to look at kind of integration. So the same results could be integrated with third-party applications. So in this example, we've got a Power BI dashboard, and within that Power BI dashboard, we're simply embedding a web map into the application. So not only does the pie charts and bar charts and tables respond accordingly to the data that you're selecting, but the map will do also. So it highlights the data coming from your spatial information source, and you can see that data changing on the map. So what I'll do now is I'll pass over to Matt. He's going to talk about how he utilizes GIS within Stoke and makes it more consumer friendly for his users. So over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Ian. Morning, everybody. As Ian says, my name's Matthew Horwell. I work for Stoke-on-Trent City Council, where I'm the GIS coordinator. I'm going to give you a bit of an example of what we've been doing with GIS at Stoke, as well as using the new web map system. So first, a little bit about Stoke. It's a unitary authority based in North Staffordshire, made up of 6 towns, almost equidistant between Manchester and Birmingham. Known locally as the Potteries. It was historically famous the world over for its ceramics. You can see there's a number of companies, some of which were still operating, that transported pottery and earthenware all across the globe. Stoke's not only famous for its potteries, there's also a notable famous people such as Captain Edwin Smith, who was the captain of the Titanic. Clarice Cliff, famous for pottery. Arnold Bennett, renowned author. Obviously Lemmy and Phil Taylor, and some chap called Robbie Williams. So Stoke, huge pottery industry, foundries, coal mines, but sadly all that industry declined, basically leaving a highly skilled and trained workforce unemployed, which resulted in Stoke becoming quite a deprived area. As you can see here, that it's got quite a large number of deprived neighbourhoods, which sadly paints a bit of a bleak picture, really. But you can see here that Stoke is a relatively small area, just around 36 square miles, but with a population of around 270,000 at the last census. So there's quite a lot of us all crammed into a smallish space. But happy to say that Stoke is on the up. It's employment growth was named the fastest in the UK, with over 8,000 jobs created in the last 5 years, including jobs in manufacturing, transportation, storage, accommodation. We even gained a Hilton Hotel to put us on the map. And Erwin Mitchell placed Stoke at the top of the UK powerhouse table. So we're on the way back. So a little bit about Stoke then, with interaction with the public. Like a lot of authorities, we hold a lot of information in a number of different areas. A lot of different teams and sections interacting with the general public. And again, like a lot of local authorities, facing budgetary cuts, which also means staff cuts, which means that Stoke and everywhere else are having to work more efficiently. We're having to try and find more inventive ways of trying to meet the ever-increasing demands from the public with less resources. So today I'm just going to concentrate on one of the maps that we've got in place, which deals with social care. So having interactions with social services, social care, we can find that there is a lot of information stored in various places, whether that's Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, Access databases, as well as local knowledge in people's heads. So we've got a lot of back office staff, as well as social workers who are out there with the public, trying to glean that information in, hoover it all up into some kind of usable source. Plus then we've also got partnership working with the likes of the NHS, Trussell Trust, the DWP. Instead of trying to handhold people through from beginning to solution, try and do more of a signposting service, if you like. There's a lot of provision from service providers and charities who are doing great things in the community. So if we can point people to those, then all the better. So this social directory map basically grew from an organic project. I fit into this with the Stoke GIS function. So I'm the GIS coordinator, a GIS team of one. I am backed up by Paul in IT, who manages our servers and my Oracle connection. But we have around 28 desktop users embedded in different teams and sections throughout the authority. They're the sort of the heavier desktop users, where they need to be able to create and do heavy analysis work. We've also got people using our web map editor software, which is accessible through the intranet. The good thing with this is any information created via the desktop can get published to the web map editor. So the lightweight users who just need to be able to highlight an area and produce a quick map. But we have also then got people who are using the web map editor to do editing. And now the good thing is that we can publish that information externally to the general public where it fits GDPR, where the data is sort of sanitized and deemed suitable for public consumption. And that gets published now through to our web mapping software. So here we can see the sort of the life cycle of data. We'll take Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, paper notes, things like that, create a data set using CAD Sys desktop. Workspaces, the SWDs, they get saved on the GIS server, and some of the data will get saved on the GIS server, but where we need to share information across, we like to put it in Oracle, because it just means it's highly portable. Then we can plug into that from any system or for any location. And as mentioned, we can access that through the web map editor, where we've got people editing as well as just read-only access. And then that can get published to our external web mapping. So the social directory, as I said, there was a lot of information all over the place. And as I started to deal with different teams within social care, it kind of hit on that we've got this idea of being able to produce information geographically, pictorially, out to the general masses. So it kind of started with the Safer Places scheme and the all-inclusive opportunities, where we had service providers who deal with families who have got disabled relatives, whether that's learning disabilities, mental capacity issues, as well as physical disabilities, and sort of the aged population charities. These opportunities obviously get people out and about doing things. So we had this big directory, which was a number of Word documents that stored all this information. And a family would ring up and say, I'm going to be visiting such and such an area. What can we do? Well, it made sense to take all that information and put it onto a map. So then, rather than having people hanging on the phone while we try and route through to find information, we can point them to this map, whether they can search for an address or they can browse an area, and they can view all of the opportunities, all the activities that are going on within a particular area. So obviously then as grew, we started to bring things in like support services. So we've got mental health, sexual health, counselling services, drug and alcohol addiction services, needle exchanges, the list goes on. We then brought in disabled access toilets and changing places. So obviously people who are wheelchair bound that will need toileting facilities, they know before they arrive that if I'm caught short, I can go to such and such a place. Obviously then, as I said, conversations with different sections in social services caught on and realised that, well, we could put things like homeless services on. Where can people go if they need a hot meal? Where can people go if they need medical advice? Then obviously following that came food banks. So this is where the partnership working came with the Trussell Trust, where we could put on a map the location of actual food banks. Then again, partnership working, we decided to pick up information from the NHS. So hospitals, GPs, pharmacies, dentists, opticians. And then the older people's housing options, these are shared schemes. So we've got sheltered schemes and as well as warden control schemes. being able to view where these locations are on a map, along with all this other information, means that we can view in that proximity, where's the local GP, where's the nearest pharmacy. Then going further with that, where's the nearest bus stop? Where are the car parks? Where are the parks and youth activity provisions? We could tie all this together into one map. So here we can see just briefly the first layer, as I mentioned, which was safer places. So all these little yellow houses are locations where if somebody who is signed up to the Safer Places scheme, whether they've got learning disabilities or mental capacity issues, if they feel unsafe or they need some help, they can go to any one of these locations where staff, they're namely like shops and supermarkets, things like that, but staff have been trained to be able to help them and contact a next of kin or a friend to come and collect them and come and help them. So we can see here that we can plan to try and attract more safer places to the scheme where there may be holes, but then we can also see where there's a higher density of places. So moving on, here we have our food banks and the support services. And then the changing places and disabled access toilets. So we can see straight away areas where we know that we've got a high concentration of these sort of facilities, and areas where we could perhaps try and work more with the community to see if we can provide better access. And again, here, this is the NHS information. Admittedly, I said the NHS do have their own information on their own website, but a lot of that I found was in textual format, which, whilst it's there, I figured it would be easier to put it in to a map and link in with our information so we can see at a glance where we can go for pharmacies, opticians, such like. So again, as I mentioned, we've got things like parks, which is great. If we've got a family, young family with pushchairs and what have you, if they want to be able to go and visit one of these parks, obviously we can see the school location, but how do we get to and from these parks? So by being able to pull out of the Naptan bus stop information, we can plot those on a map so we can try and help people to navigate their way around the city and be able to actually go and visit some of these places. Then mix that in with aerial photography, and we could see, obviously, it's easier to sort of gauge where you're looking. I mean, here we're looking at Stoke City Football Club. It gives you a bit more of an idea of the lay of the land if you can actually sort of pick out areas on the map. Then, because it's an interactive map, it means that any of the items on the screen we can actually click on, we can interrogate. So here we're clicking on that little yellow dot, which is showing us youth provision. So we can see here that Stoke City Football Club work alongside the YMCA to provide football for the young members of society. And then here, touching on the older people's housing options, we can theme that information depending on the type of sheltered scheme, whether it's a warden scheme, whether it's a supported accommodation. And as I said, by being able to click on any of the items on the map, we can glean the information, the textual attributes behind that point data. So here we can see the full address, phone numbers, and any other information that might be might be useful pertaining to that location. And because it's web-based, it means that we can provide access to the Housing Association website directly, as well as being able to tie into useful tools such as Google Street View. By having a little Google Street View man linked to the attributes, we can get a virtual tour in that area to see what the location looks like. So the result of the social directory map. Initially, we tried to get buy-in from managers as well as different teams. But as I said, as more and more people realized that this map existed, we started to get more and more information thrown towards us to be able to put into the map to make it a more richer experience for the general public. The idea being that we could potentially also have the likes of social workers going out to see people and being able to show on a tablet or a mobile device or the laptop all of these sort of interesting or activities and things in that area. It also means less work primarily for us, because obviously we're not trying to keep all these lists of these different activities and different services. We just need to keep a record of these service providers, and then we can point people towards those service providers so that they can do what they do best. They can provide these services directly to the members of the public, and hopefully then that should kind of mean that there's going to be slightly less interaction for us with the public if we can just point them in the direction of the map. It basically sort of give them a bit of a self-service, if you like. So as I said, the social directory is just one map that we've got. We try to keep our maps thematic. So rather than having one huge workspace map, we try to keep things slightly separate. So here you can see some of the other maps that we've got, such as our elections map, which points people in the right direction for their local polling station. We've got planning applications map, which links directly into the planning system. We have the SHLA, the Strategic Housing Land Availability Assessment, public rights of way, planning constraints, the wit and gritting. There's other maps that are on the pipeline that I'm hoping that we can sort of get out and published within the coming months. So that's me done. Thank you very much for listening. I'll hand you back over to Ian.
Thank you very much, Matt. So that's from Matt. So that's a really good interesting way of how he's utilising Web Map to display lots and lots of different data to services that he thinks want it within the Stoke-on-Trent City Council areas. That's a really good way. So thank you very much for that, Matt. If you do have any questions, what we'll do is if you put your questions on the right, we'll ask them towards the end. So if you've got any questions for Matt, either related to this presentation or just general questions, please let us know, and then we'll go through them at the end as well. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at a demonstration of the things that we've said today. So use cases around how we can make GIS more consumer friendly. So we're going to start by looking at the desktop, and then we're going to look at the web map. And we're going to look at web maps specifically for the analysis and the results of the information that you're providing to your end users. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my application. So hopefully you can all see my screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you the CAD Corp Sys desktop. So this is the desktop application. And what we can do is we can load in predefined maps and standard maps, and you can have access to your recent maps and projects. All I'm going to do is say that we've got a blank map. And the reason I'm going to do that is because, as I said at the start, you guys get lots and lots of different data, and it all comes in different file formats, it comes in different projections, and you want a system that is just going to take all of that data and just load it in into the GIS desktop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a file, and what we need first is some ordnance survey base mapping. So I'm going to take a geo package, which is a fairly new file, and that's our ordnance survey open zoom stack data. And I'm just going to simply drag and drop that into the map. And what you'll see is that zoom stack comes through. And what I can do once it's done is we can zoom into an area that we're interested in. So our area that we're going to look at today is the York area. So because we work really closely with Ordnance Survey, we know how the data should be structured. So for example, we've got all the features that are enabled within that zoom stack data. So I can turn off my green space, for example, or our urban areas. And we can turn our names off as well. So I'm gonna leave my names off just so it enhances the data that we're gonna add in a second. So now I want to add some of our business data. So as we've said, this comes in lots and lots of different file formats. So if we start with our flat files, we can load in a BDS file, which is a native CAD Corp file format. We're also going to take a tab file, which is map info, and a MIF file, which is also map info. And then we're going to take a shape file, which is Esri. And we're just going to simply drag and drop them straight into the map. And what you'll see is all the data appears. So on our map interface, what we've got is our conservation areas, and we can turn those off. We've got our local nature reserves, which were the orange polygons, and then we've got allotments, which were the green ones. What you'll see is we've left with our yellow circles, and these are because these are our listed buildings. So if I zoom in now, what you see is we've got all of our listed buildings within York on the map as well. So it's really easy and friendly for the user to just take whatever data format and simply add it to the desktop application. As we said, you might have data that's stored in a business management system. So for example, your planning applications are probably going to be stored in a SQL or Oracle or PostGIS database. So it's really easy that you have the same ease of bringing the data in from a database as well. So if I say add overlay and go to databases, you'll see in front of us, we've got SQL Sport, PostGIS, and we've got Oracle. All our data is stored in PostGIS, so that's why I'm going to add it in. And the system remembers the logins that you've used, which is great. And then what we can do is we can search for a table that we're going to add in. So we've got a national planning applications database, and we're going to say next. And then what I'm going to do in this next configuration is just simply change the file name. So we're going to call this planning applications, and then under theme, so it comes in, it looks nice when it comes in. I'm just going to say that all our polygons are going to be red. And when I click finish, what you'll see is that we've got our planning applications in there straight away as well. So this is data that's coming from one of our internal systems, business management systems. And again, it's really easy to add that data into the desktop application. And then what you might want to do is add data from a third-party website. So as we've said, there's loads of different data that's being provided in a web feature service format, or a web mapping tile service, or a web mapping service. And again, it should make it really easy for the user to be able to add that data in simply. So if I go to add overlay, we can say that we want to add in an OGC compliant web service, and I'm going to choose our web map feature service. What we're going to do here is connect to the York inspired data set. So we've got the URLs being maps.york.gov.uk. And then what we can do is we can see all the tables that are listed. So it's connected to that. And I'm going to say that we want to add in our smoke control zones, for example. We can then decide what attributes we want to bring along with it. So I'm just going to leave it as the standard ones. And then we can also filter the data if we want to, but as it's just for demo, we're just going to add that data in. So now what we're able to do is we can see the smoke control zones for the York here as well. And this is a really good way of adding the data, because you as a user is not responsible for how this data is maintained. It's coming from a web service that, as that web service gets updated, the data underneath it changes as well, which is brilliant. And as we said, this tool, after all this data has been put in, could be used to then publish that data out to the web so that your users can see it and analyze it and get results from it, very similar to what Matt's been showing as well. So what we'll do now is have a quick look at the web. So I'm going to close down the desktop site, and what we'll do now is we'll have a look at the website. So this is our web mapping application. So this allows us to query and visualize spatial information over the web, and it's designed to be really, really simple. So you've got a nice big user interface, and it's a slippy map. So as I'm using the mouse to roll in, what you'll see is it goes through all the different mapping scales that we've got available, and this is obviously our zoom stack data that we're zooming in, but then we've also got our scale thresholded master map at the bottom. So what you see is we've got a more detailed mapping, so we can identify our street names and road numbers and things like that as well. And just for consistency, what we're saying is that to make it more consumer friendly, the same mapping should be published throughout the web. So there's no need to translate data into different projections or change the coordinate reference system. And we can do that using embedded maps. So if I just switch quickly to an embedded map, what you see here is we've got an embedded map which is utilizing the web map. So it's providing the same consistent base mapping that you guys are familiar with, and so are your users. But then it's also got the data switched on as well. So we make it simple because we've got different features that we can add. So zoom in and zoom out options on the left-hand side. You see at the bottom right, we've got the east and north in as the mouse moves, so it tracks it. We've got a key map that allows the user to see where they are. And then what we've got as well is the option of adding in the overlays that you want users to be able to select. So for example, I might turn let's turn our trees off and our planning applications so we can see our schools and we can zoom around and see those schools. Or we could actually turn our planning applications back on, but then we've got a master option that allows us to turn all the data off. But either way, it just makes it really easy and consistent for you to use the same mapping within a web page that users are familiar with, so they won't need to re-educate themselves in what the data looks like or what they should be familiar with and what's an urban area or an allotment grant, things like that. So what we can do now is we're going to look at the kind of the analysis side of things. So I'm going to focus on a particular area. So the first thing I'm going to do is use the quick search to search for postcode. And because it's postcode, the quick search returns as the address. This could have been a plan application or a village or a town, but because we've selected an address, it goes to the appropriate place on the map. And what I'm going to do is just turn our planning applications on. So if I go to land, I can see our planning application straight away. And most of our demo is going to concentrate on this particular area that we've got available to us. So the user will want to find information about that polygon. So a simple left click allows the user to see two summary attributes. So what we've picked here is the application reference and the address. So they can make sure that whatever they've clicked on is the right thing that they want to look at. If they are happy with that, they can then say that they might want to show more. So here we're now saying, well, the users, that plan application is pulling the data back from the business management system, and it's showing us the application type, the planning officer, the district boundary, and then it's also enabling us to link to things that make it more useful. So we might add in there a plan application image, so we can see the image for that particular site in question. We can look at a PDF that we've got available, so we can see the floor plans for that area. And then what we can also do is link away to the website. So using that application reference, it makes it really easy for the user to click on the website, and it goes away to the appropriate plan application reference number as well. So it's all contained within the same application. And then as Matt's shown, you can also utilize third-party web links as well. So we've got an expression here that allows us to get a virtual tour of Street View before we've even gone out on site. So we can get as close as we can to that particular plan application, and that allows us to take a look around before we actually go out on site, and we can understand the area better. So that's about using web links in order to make it friendlier for the user to be able to navigate. They don't have to click on a plan application, then go to the plan applications database and retrieve the information. It's all there and contained and available in front of them. What we can also do is we can utilize web services. So here we've got our local knowledge web services, which is a really advanced spatial analysis tool that allows us to analyze data simply by clicking. So straight away, as soon as I've clicked, it sends it retrieves the information that's related to the location and on the map that we've looked at. So here we're doing kind of about my property searches. So we're saying this is our representative and this is the ward that they're in. What day our bin rounds get picked up. It can provide statistical information. So within this area that we've selected, there's been 679 crimes within 1,000 meters, and the most popular within 500 meters is antisocial behavior. And then it can also provide find my nearest. So we've said that users might want to see the 5 nearest bus stops or the 5 nearest allotments. And because they find them on the map, if we were to click on one of them, it goes away and highlights where that area is, and you might want to have additional information and maybe an image in there as well. So it's a really good way of users giving answers to users just by them simply clicking on a map or using the GPS on the device to get the answer straight away for a particular area that they're interested in. We can also allow users to extract data. So what I'm going to do now, if I can find where my plan application is we are going to say that we want to allow the user to search for information. So this plan application, we need to notify the residential properties within that area that this plan application has been submitted, for example. So this is a really good way of utilizing the search by area. So there's a number of different data sets that we can search on, and we're going to choose our address base. And the user can draw their own search area to filter. They can create a point and maybe create a buffer with that and say everything within 20 meters, for example. But what we're going to do is we're going to select our plan application and then just apply a buffer of 75 meters. So if I click on the plan application, it tells me that the plan application reference details, which is great because I know that's the one that we're using. And when I click search, you'll see it draws an area of the boundary that we are looking at. So that's the boundary of the polygon with the 75 meters. And what you'll see on the left-hand side is we've conducted the spatial search, so it's given us all the answers available to us, which is brilliant. And it lists 25 to a page. I'm going to say that I want to see all the results, so now you see they've all got green dots. But what we can also do is we've done the spatial filter. You might want to give the user the option of saying, well, actually, I'm interested in, we said residential properties. So I know the classification for residential is RD. So if I type in RD now, you'll see it filters out that data and says out of those 76, there's only 7 that are residential properties. So at that point, we could download it and we've got an Excel file that provides us with a possible mail merge of all the residential properties within that area that we've questioned. So it's a really good way of getting data out of the application. And then our final look at our analysis is our find it application. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the same postcode. And this is so our find it application is going to find lots and lots of different data that fall within the planning application's boundary. So this is designed for constraint checking. So what constraints are there associated with this planning application, for example? And the user will choose that they can draw their own feature. They can select a master map item, which is great. They could draw a buffer, but again, because we know the plan application, we're just going to select the item that we're interested in. The item comes back and we can select it. And then what we can do is we can say that we want to create a search, and it returns all of the data available for this constraint. So for example, we are looking at our conservation area, and it falls within, there's one conservation area that falls within that area. We've got 4 listed buildings that overlap that planning application, and we've got 1 green infrastructure and parking zone, and brownfield is part of the brownfield register. But it's allowing us to query lots and lots and lots of different data at the same time, which make it even easier for the end users to be able to get the information out of the application that they want. And this kind of moves on to our results as well. So the user at that point will say that they want a PDF. So when we create the PDF, we can save that. And what you'd expect and what you get is that the PDF then tells you information about the polygon that you've selected. So here we can see a search date and time for the report results. We can see the report reference and the number of results that we've got available. But then as we scroll down, it lists all of those items. So we know that we had 1 conservation area, for example, and it lists all of the attributes. I think we had 4 listed buildings, and they're all listed below. And then the same with the remaining data. So things like the parking zone areas and the brownfield sites. But again, if there's a URL that's contained in that, we should be able to click it, open it up, and it takes us away to appropriate website. So not only are we getting the results, but yet again, we're able to fire off to places that will hold more information about that particular area. And then what you might find right at the end of the report is you've got acknowledgements. So things like acknowledging the historic data, historic England data that you're using within the website as well. So analysis could come in different formats. So one of them might be the notice board application, which provides the same spatial data, but not necessarily with the requirement of a map. So if I type in the same postcode, what you'll see this time is this notice board application is using exactly the same spatial data. It's just presenting it in a lot more easily understandable way for the end user. So again, I'll put a postcode in, but you could use a GPS on a mobile or tablet device. But what's happening is it's doing all the same spatial analysis that we saw from the local knowledge, but it's presenting it without the need for a map. So you're getting things like how many planning applications are within this area, what your local government, who your local government councillors are, your nearest green spaces and nearest bus stops and things like that. Again, we've got an example of a third-party application. So this is a web service that utilises weather, so we can see the weather reports for this particular area at the time. And again, we can utilise URLs. So we've said we might want to show users the nearest train station, but we should also be able to show them when the trains are arriving or departing. So it just makes it really easy, and it's all consistently used within the same application as well. And then our last form of analysis comes in the form of the Power BI application. So we touched on this with the embedded map, but what you can do is you can integrate the web mapping into applications. So this is a really good way of us allowing to utilizing the same web mapping application that we've just seen and embedding it into a Power BI report, so that as the data changes in the Power BI report, so does the points on the map, for example. And that's one benefit, but the other benefit is it's using the same consistent base mapping. So again, you're not having to retranslate your point data to something else to support a different mapping system, for example. And to show that how this all works is as we click on our, as we filter our data, for example. So if I filter out the species to be cherry, what you'll see is all the numbers and the dashboards and the pie charts change, which is great. But what we can also do then is maybe filter out for parish council trees. So I know that count goes to 3. We can see how they are shown on the report. But then if I zoom in, you'll see it's using the zoom scale in the back. And then what we can do is we can see where those 3 properties are. And then what we might also do is we might use the hover over tip to say, well, actually, I might need to find the attributes of these particular tree preservation orders as well. So it's a really good way of utilizing kind of the embedded map within a Power BI report as well. So that's kind of the end of the demonstration side of things. So what we've looked at is the desktop for utilizing lots and lots of different data at the same time, and we can simply add that in from our own flat files or business management systems or the services from another website. And then we've looked at a web mapping for kind of the analysis side, so being able for users to be able to click on a polygon and find the information, or using web services to find advanced information. And then we're looking at the results as well, so being able to provide PDFs that can be shared throughout the council, or a notice board application that doesn't necessarily need a map and aids for self-service of your users. And then the Power BI integration as well, which makes it more consistent with your own mapping, and you've got an easily understandable format of data rather than having to translate it. So what I'll do now is just go back to the demonstration, or the PowerPoint, should I say. And if I just continue, there's a demonstration slide. So hopefully what the key takeaways from today is that there's lots of choice in terms of what type of GIS to provide to your users. So you don't have to overcomplicate things when something simple is going to suffice. And there are lots of tools that you can provide for your users as well. So there are multiple ways of presenting different results and analysis. So, for example, your PDF documents and reports and your dashboards and your web mapping applications, but they're all relevant in order for the users to get the most out of the data that you're providing and making accessible. So, as we said, what we'll do now is we'll open up to questions. What I can see is that there's been quite a few questions asked, so I might just cherry pick maybe 3 or 4. And then if there's any more, we will get back to you. Your account manager will come back to you at some point today. I just want to reassure you that they don't just disappear. We get past them to you, and we'll contact you later today. So what I'll do is I'll pick 3. So I'm going to pick some for Matt, because I can see there's a couple for Matt. So hopefully Matt's going to turn his audio on. So one of the first questions that I can see, Matt, which is relevant, I suppose, in terms of what you've been doing. So somebody's asked, have you done any work in relation to the COVID-19 stuff?
Yes, I have. I've been undertaking some work with the Gold Command and obviously social care. We were plotting locations of vulnerable people across the city with a view to aiding medication deliveries and emergency food parcel deliveries. I think a lot of that data sort of was sourced from within the council, but also from partnership working with the NHS. It was quite a good piece of work actually, because we had a web form that call handlers were using to sort of cold call people to check in on them, to see how they were doing, to see if they had any medication or food needs. And then the information that they fed into that web form got fed through to the map, because we were using an internal instance of web map to display the information so that we could theme it up sort of under a red, amber, green kind of theme. And there's a few other bits of work I've been doing with food parcel delivery, so we can sort of try and tie that in with areas of deprivation to see if there's any sort of correlation with the requirements for food parcels within certain areas of the city.
Are you using dynamic themes, Matt? Are you using, so when the date changes underneath, does the point data change or the themes change that's related to it?
Yeah, obviously because the form entry is date stamped when it's submitted to Oracle, I could use a sort of basically like a date difference kind of theme, so we could pick up the time elapsed from when that person was last contacted, including if they hadn't been able to contact that person at all, so that the theme would change dynamically, so it would sort of highlight people that they'd not been able to contact, or people who it exceeded the amount of time that they wanted to contact them.
Brilliant. That's a really good way of doing it, because you're having all the data written into your Oracle database, and as it changes, your themes are changing, which shows whether it's responding today or tomorrow, or you know, based on your red, amber, green situation. That's a really good way of doing it. Make it more informative to the end user, definitely. I'm just looking at questions again. There's a lot of questions. I've got one here that just says, so can your web map application be hosted in the cloud? So I'll take that one. So the answer is yes. So we do have cloud-based web maps with sites already, but it's not only the web map as well. You can also host the notice board application that you've seen, and Gignosis, which is the server-based application that sits in the back, that can also be hosted in the cloud. But what we've also started doing just recently, as of May, is the desktop GIS can be hosted in the cloud as well, and that's a managed service which provides access to the hosted desktop application via a virtual desktop or a web browser. So there's lots of different benefits, and if you're interested in the kind of the cloud migration, there's a webinar we did recently that gives you a lot of those benefits available to you. So that's a really good question. Thank you for that. And then, like I say, we're running out of time a little bit, so I'll pick one out for Matt again, because you've got a lot of questions, Matt. So another question for you is related to so it looks like it's relating to the attributes. So you had some interesting attributes in your web map. Can you tell us more about any other links you might have created elsewhere? And that's from Andy.
Yeah, obviously linking to external websites, with it being an externally interactive map web instance, linking into things like school websites and housing association websites. One of the first interactive maps that we actually put live was the planning applications map, whereby we could pull the spatial polygons out of the iDocs accolade system, display the polygon on the map, but then build a dynamic URL that would then be able to link back to the Stoke planning portal web page. So the idea being that you could click on a planning application polygon, and then by clicking on the attributes, link back to the planning application to view all the associated documentation and all the notes that get fed through from the accolade system.
Brilliant. Do your planning department use it actively then? Have they signed up to that and utilising the tools of that?
Yeah, I think it's obviously it could take a lot of the questions and phone calls away, by people being able to sort of self-serve, if you like, view the actual application on the map in relation to, you know, where they live, and then because all the information is served up automatically through the planning, the Stoke planning page, they basically get everything they need there. So it kind of removed the need for people to phone in and ask questions about the planning application. We could just sort of point them to the interactive website or the planning applications page, and sort of the two interlink.
Brilliant, excellent. Thanks for that, Matt.
Okay.
Right, so I think I'm going to leave the questions there. Like I say, there are questions and they do get submitted, and we do see them at the end. So if we haven't answered one of your questions, one of the sales guys from CADCorp will get back to you later to answer the questions that you've submitted. So the last thing that I want to say is, so thank you for attending today. If you do want to get in touch, here are my details, so you'll find them on the screen. But what you can also do is you can contact CADCorp as well. Like I say, all the questions that you've asked will get answered. It's quite interesting to keep an eye on our events page as well, the CADCorp events page, because that'll have future webinars that we present in. And I think that's everything. So just want to say thank you very much for attending. I hope you found that really useful, and we'll see you all again very, very soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.